Okay, let's get underway. So this session is called Engineering the Wealthiest Version of You, Transforming from a Business Owner into a High Net Worth Individual. So in my path in recent years, what I've really noticed working with over 300 business owners is that we all set out into business, but it's not really to run the business. It's really for the result of the business. So we're setting out to ideally create security, certainty, optionality in our life. But ultimately, kind of in the back of our mind is, hey, we really do need enough money for retirement and to have a fun retirement, not one of those, counting coins type retirements. But now let's look at the big picture of, hey, are you going to have enough at the end? And then what are the things that you can do to really crank that up? So I'm not a registered financial advisor, so this is just for educational purposes only. All right, so if we think about this with the hunting in nature, we really don't want to be the slowest, because what happens to the slowest? They get eaten, right? So ideally we want to be the fastest in the herd. So that's what this is really going to be talking about. Everything I'm going to show you here really, really works. I'm kind of like one of those guys on the internet who got lucky, but luck is labor under correct knowledge. So I kind of engineered it for myself. And really, I'm able to live, it's a concept I learned from James Tramko, the semi-retired lifestyle. So yes, I do work and I progress on stuff, but it's not always just a mad sprint. I get to surf every day. I get to have a heap of fun. We vacation a lot and that kind of thing. So if we think back to the advice that a lot of our parents gave us and the older generations from us, and was really like, hey, get a good, safe job. But who thinks this is good advice now? Go get a good, safe job. Because what's the problem with a good, safe job? The worst number in business is 1. That employer can tell you at any time to go. And as we saw, I'm even guilty of it myself, putting off my executive assistant, and replacing her with a $15 a month AI tool. It's not great, but it happened, and that's just an example of, and it wasn't even that we just ran out of work. We didn't have any work anymore. That was really what that came out about. But a lot of people say, hey, what you do is too risky. I want to play it safe. But what does playing it safe look like? Okay, so does anyone see a problem with this plan? Have fun early on, then work really, really hard, and then at the end have a little bit of time and then die. But I definitely want to modify this so you're having fun, the whole way through and work smart. So who knows who this guy is? Naval Ravikant. He is so wise. He's like one of the wisest people I've ever studied in my life. So he says that there's an intelligence test to life, okay? It's not about how good you are at math or how much money you make or anything like that. He says the only true test of intelligence is if you get what you want out of life. So that's like getting crystal clear on what you want out of life, because your subconscious brain works like a heat-seeking missile. So if you never tell it exactly what you want out of life, or if you never write it down, then you'll kind of meander along. The way a heat-seeking missile works is it seeks, did I hit a heat source? And if I didn't, then, or if I didn't hit a big one, then it keeps going until it hits a big heat source. So your subconscious brain needs specifics that you like, exactly what's the cash flow we're after, what's the lifestyle we're after, what's the end goal in our super and in our personal, and then engineer it, how are we going to make it happen? So what is your number? When's enough? So what this is talking about is for that retirement figure, what are you chasing? Are you chasing, do you need $1 million? Do you need $2 million, $3 million, $5 million, right? So can everyone get a number in their head? You don't have to tell me out loud. What is the number that you're chasing for in retirement? That would be enough. And then we're going to do some blackboard math. So what's your number? We just spoke about that. So in this example, we'll go through a hypothetical example of $3 million. Okay. And then what's your current net worth? So as far as what could you get your hands on? So say it was 500,000 through your personal and your and your superannuation. And then how many years until you're kind of slowing down? In this example, let's assume we were slowing down at 65 and we were 50 years of age now, but you might want to slow down at 70 and whatever. But anyway, for this example, we're saying, hey, you got 15 years, right? So are you on track in that example? This is very, very common of a lot of business owners that I meet, right? But they just want to keep doing the exact same thing and are not willing to pivot or change. So are you on track, or you need a faster horse? In this case, we've got a $2.5 million gap and we've got 15 years to do it. So we have to put aside $166,000 a year to meet that goal. So that kind of seems a bit hard, doesn't it? That doesn't feel that fun. But the good news is I'm going to show you an easier way to do that later on, and how I've been doing it. This is based off the idea of, hey, we're just going to work in our business and we're going to try and make this money and save it, which is a very, very hard way to get wealthy on its own. It's a great vehicle, but it's not the only vehicle. So unfortunately, many business owners that I meet won't ever achieve their number goal, at the end of what they're chasing. So most business owners I meet want tactics to grow the business, but if we look at that end goal, what we actually need is a strategy to build the wealth. Does that make sense? So ideally we want both. We get both. So realistically, we can't do the same thing as everyone else and expect a different result. So we want to work smart, not hard. This is another Naval thing, Naval Ravikant. I've really studied him a lot. He says that we need to get rich without getting lucky, and that it's a learned skill. Making money that's a skill that you learned, which I thought was really smart. So it's like, who are we studying, and have they got the results that we're after, or are we just doing the same thing as everyone else? This kind of like then brings us into that mindset area, and we bring ourselves to the deal. Sometimes we've seen like amazing opportunities, amazing businesses, amazing deals, and then it all falls apart at the end because the business owner sabotaged it, made it crash because of their mindset limitations or their emotional intelligence, that kind of thing. So Pat Mesiti says you can't build $1 million business with a $2 mindset. Right. So, and every time we get together with the collective, we always do something on mindset and emotional intelligence, because it's a continual journey. Like, I'm still learning this. Everyone's still learning this stuff. You can't just say, hey, I've got mindset and emotional intelligence nailed. It's an ongoing process. The reason why I put up the lottery thing is because you see those examples where someone won $2 million in the lottery, and how long did they keep it? Not very long, 5 years or something to that effect, and it's gone. And the reason why is because they got $1 million money with a $100,000 mindset. Does that make sense? And so they literally didn't know how to manage the money. And it's interesting with money, it kind of feels like there's an energy component to it, and you either attract it or you repel it, sort of thing. And so I think the attraction is definitely more fun of the two than the repel it. So Tony Robbins is one of my greatest mindset coaches over time, says, as much as 80% of your success is your mindset and your emotional intelligence. And then this is a Jim Rohn thing, which is like, work harder on yourself than you do on your business. So, which is based off that whole, you will never outgrow your level of mindset and emotional intelligence. There's a lot more emotional intelligence and mindset than this, but we'll just cover a couple. Smooth emotional intelligence. So what that means is, like, if our emotions are a mess, if we're like really happy and then we're really sad and we're just like a volatile train wreck, those people are very, very rarely are they successful. There is exceptions. I would say Donald Trump would be an exception. Like, his emotional intelligence, like, and he like tweets and things happen, but he has been very successful. But that, I would say, is the exception, not the norm. As far as like working with over 300 business owners, what I've found is if you can control your emotions and be pretty steady, that definitely helps with things. The third thing here was like a bias towards action. You can spend a lot of time learning things, talking about stuff, but like actually really, making it happen. And then the last one, and this for Jules and I, this has probably been the most important out of these four big things, was resilience. Because as a business owner, I've never found it to just be 100% smooth journey upwards and to the right. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're always getting kicked in the guts. And then, there's that, I think it's a Rocky thing. It's not about whether or not you're going to get a hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and then just keep moving forward. And that's kind of like it's going to be, if you think about it with a bicycle, when you're learning to ride a bike, you fell over, like your parents didn't say, oh, maybe this bike riding isn't for little Johnny. It was like resilience, get up. And there's that saying, like get back on the bike or get back on the horse. Although I've had examples with horses when they're like, get back on the horse. I'm like, nah, fuck that. That horse is crazy. But that's an example where you don't have, don't have control over them. Maybe I just didn't have the right level of skill. Mm. So it's as much as 80% of your success. One thing that I've seen, especially in recent years, one of the biggest things biggest risks to great wealth is the emotion side. When things go wrong, if people can't control their emotions, like really, really sabotages them. And particularly on the investing, it does happen on the business as well. And this is where you're playing a long game or you're playing a short game of, what's happening just now. And most of the time we're playing a long game. So this is like a really, really a big area that I'm passionate about. And we spoke about this on day one, like as far as, no one's really coming along to save you. There's no knight in white shining armor, or in this case, pink shining armor, coming along to save you. So you really can only rely on you and your, one significant other. I don't think there's anyone else you can really, really, rely on. So the buck ultimately, stops with you. And we have this saying of directionally correct. What it means is like, hey, we might not be doing everything right, but as long as we're continually moving in the right direction, then that works. And we do that with diet and fitness and money and business and traffic and leads and anything like that. I think it's just a great framework. Hey, are we directionally correct? Are we moving in the right direction? Another big, we're just going through a couple of key points that really, really matter, is 80-20 anything. So I won't ask who, but if there was any perfectionists in the room, right? Being a perfectionist as far as from a wealth creation point of view, unless you're a product design specialist, like say, for example, you're designing an iPhone or whatever, but as a general rule, being a perfectionist is going to slow down, your progress. You'll see some of the most amazing entrepreneurs, they're basically just charging forward and there's a little bit of a trail of chaos behind them, right? And that's fine, that's normal because the visionary and success follows speed, there's no doubt about it. But that's fine as long as there's some team members or someone coming along behind, and basically picking that up or, So I know for myself, I would never make a good accountant, because near enough is good enough, to me, but some people, that's how their minds really work. But basically we need to focus on, hey, what's the 20% of things that are going to give us 80% of results? Or even better, what's the 10% of things that are going to give us 90% of results? That whole Pareto principle. And then to build the ultimate, the wealthiest version of us, we really do need both cash flow and net worth. So what do we mean by that? You'll see people who've got millions and millions of dollars in the bank, but if their cash flow is messed up, and this has happened to us as well, if your cash flow is not high enough to meet your expenses and to be comfortable and have optionality and all that, then it gets stressful. And then the other side is you can have really good cash flow. And I see this with 8 out of 10 businesses or whatever, they've got really good cash flow, but then that golden goose, they're not building the golden goose of net worth. So you really, really do need both. And then ultimately you build the golden goose of net worth. And then over time, later on, you can harvest the eggs and live off the eggs without killing the goose. But we'll get into that in a little bit. And then this was a key learning for me early on, was I was doing the time for money game when I was an IT contractor. I got $30 an hour or $40 an hour or $50 an hour, that kind of thing. But the problem with time for money is there's no leverage in it, okay? And we'll look at leverage in a sec. So we needed to move for value for money. So say, for example, in the travel company stuff that I do, out of the 4 partners, I would probably do the least hours out of the 4 partners. But it doesn't matter, and no one's ever said anything and no one even cares about it because they know that in my areas, so I do some marketing stuff, but I really, really run all the devs and technology. I'm sort of like the chief technology officer in that. It all just runs like clockwork. So they don't care because the value's there. Like if you look at basically we effectively drop ship hotel rooms, that's what the business is. And so it's a marketing and sales company and a technology company. So it's like a SaaS that does that. So the technology is a key piece. But I've implemented this system, a self-managing team, where I meet with them at the start of the week and then I meet with them on Thursdays. And at the start of the week, everyone knows exactly what they need to do. They know the priority orders. And then we have an accountability system so that when we meet together later in the week on the Thursday, everyone knows we're going to go through that exact project plan. And it's the whole thing of, like when you go to school and you didn't want to turn up without your homework, it's the exact same thing. But on that as well, if we had a lot of things due, we may make the meetings closer together. So that'll get more work out of the team if we then make those daily meetings, where they turn up, how you're doing with your homework, and get faster iteration loops. But when we're younger, we're often doing time for money. And as we get better at business and life, we need to move to value for money. How much value do we bring to get paid for, not how much time did we put in? And we spoke about leverage. This ultimately sort of builds into leverage. So what I have learned is that the more leverage that we have in life, the faster we can build wealth. So how do we get more leverage? And there's really 5 different types of leverage. This is based off, again, a Naval thing, but it's got another, the 5th one is a more recent addition. So media and content is a type of leverage. So we spoke a lot about TikTok and other short form medias, other social medias like posting on YouTube, etc. So that is media. It's taking your message and amplifying it out, or it could be written content, but it's a type of leverage. It's every time that you put out content, post it somewhere, that's another way that people can find your message and then say, hey, that guy or girl is really good. I really want to work with them, that kind of thing. So that's a type of leverage. The second one is labor. And we saw just about everyone here is doing that as far as you've got people working for you. And Pete asked a good question this morning. Is anyone just like full AI robotics? And no one was. And it really does make sense to have leverage in that space, but leverage with labor. So how are you making money on other people's time? The third one is capital. So you'll see like this is the whole venture capital business is like, hey, we'll put money into this thing if it's a hero business and we'll treat it like a rocket ship and make it go up. Or the other way we look at it is capital with our paid media, with our ads, we're actually in the amplification of capital business. We put $1 in and spit $2 or $3 out, and then how often can we do that? And can we keep doing it over and over and over again? And number 4 is code or internet. And that's why I like my favorite business model is SaaS, software as a service, because you're effectively building something that then runs largely without you, but it can capture leads, it can make sales, it can do upsells or downsells, cross-sells, all that kind of thing, without you. So we'll show you the couple main types of business models in a sec. But yeah, code and internet. And the 5th one is AI. So could you see how if you could increase all those things, you could get a lot more leverage in your life and you could make a lot more money. And then one thing that I said yesterday and got mentioned a couple of times was on the number 1 Simon Beard thing of just 5 times the amount of content in the front end is kind of like one of the fuels on the fire that you can really, really do these days. And I think number 5 is really powerful these days as well, as far as how can you make your team more efficient? How can you make your business more efficient? With AI. So 5 types of leverage. And we all just think about, hey, the business, but how can we get multiple vehicles working for us? Who thinks this guy looks reputable? I think we've all met someone like that. So anyway, different type of vehicles. So we've got our business as a vehicle. We have our personal cash, like what we're doing in our personal entities. And then we have our superannuation, or what Americans call a 401k. So often we're very one-dimensional. Hey, I'm a business guy or I'm a business girl. I'm going to make money in the business. But hang on a second. What about these other 2 vehicles? And are we thinking about them? And are we doing stuff, with them? So we're going to focus on business first, and then we're going to look at these 2 next. So let's look at the wealthiest version of you from your business. One thing I say is like we need to ultimately build a multi-leg stool. And so these guys will be sick of me saying this, is like, have multiple streams of income. And the reason why is because if we think of this as a stream of income, like we've got four of them, but then if this one drops out, like this stool will still work. Admittingly, I'll probably have to shift my ass over here a little bit, but whatever, but it'll still work, you know what I mean? But whereas if we only have one leg to this stool and it gets taken out, then boom, the stool doesn't work anymore. And I definitely see that with business owners where you've only got one stream of income, and one is the worst number in business. But the other side of that is sometimes that whole he or she who chases two rabbits catches none. So we do have to be careful, and there is a balancing act to it. We ultimately need multiple streams of income, but sometimes if we spread ourselves too thin, then it's not great and we achieve nothing. So I said here, a hero business or a multi-leg stool. For most people, it's a multi-leg stool. Have a couple of things that are providing you income. But if you have a hero business, like you may have a big e-com store, a big coaching business, or a big SaaS, that kind of thing. Then if you've got something and it's just a beast, then you probably don't need to get the multi-leg stool going, or you might be able to get them in other ways. But for most people, you need multiple streams of income. And sometimes we just need a faster horse or horses. Because who thinks this one's going to win a race? Unlikely. Probably very reliable, out in that environment, but not likely to win a race. One of the most powerful words in business that we've ever learned is next. Because sometimes Jules and I have gone down like, it must be 12 wrong rabbit holes, over the years of like, let's give it a go. You know what? Either because you need to have both psychology and math. Do they want it? And can we be profitable delivering it? And if you can't get both of those things, then that's when you either have to, can we fix it? Or, we say next. I've found over the years that scaling companies is formulaic. I'm lucky in that, but luck is labor under correct knowledge. I engineered this skill set. I was a growth hacker. So after running the marketing agency and doing coaching, but I was a growth hacker for many years. And so, and Andrew does similar sorts of stuff where you go into a company and then you make it grow and then you only don't get paid for it, but only take a clip on how much you grow it. And it only works with hero businesses because Frank Kern was my marketing coach and he used to say, avoid square moving wheels. You know what I mean? So if you've kind of got to go, poof, poof, you don't want to be involved in that. Ideally, you want to work on businesses that are going well and then you add rocket fuel to them sort of thing. But what I did find by working on so many businesses, it's a formula and it's a recipe. And everyone says, hey, but my business is different. But when it's not really, when it comes down to it, everyone's business fits into one of these as a general rule. So e-com, services business, information business, and SaaS. And they all have their pros and cons actually. And we've worked in all of them. We have this like business model profit scale. And we find that SaaS, software as a service, is the best business out of all of them, by far. And info business can be great as well, although I think info business is getting harder. Like we spoke about yesterday, it makes more sense now to have communities that have the information in it rather than just trying to sell information, because it is getting harder and harder to just sell information because there's so much of it out there for free. Services business is great, but it can have like physical limitations as far as like where you can service. You might be just in one regional or just across the country, that kind of thing. So it doesn't really scale if you look at the biggest businesses in the world, they're all SaaS. And then, or e-com, which is can also be a SaaS. E-com, I've done very well in e-com in the past. I think we mentioned that we did like $10 million on Amazon in the baby products, and then the travel companies that we do big numbers as well, much bigger than that. But one thing with a lot of e-com is you're always paying for stock. So make money and then you got to buy more stock and then make money and buy more stock. So I have been guilty, and I've seen so many of where the money's just going around in a circle. And so Kevin mentioned it really well this morning as far as like managing that cash flow cycle, as far as how quickly can you get the money back in, and that's a really, really important one with ecom. But yeah, so my business is different. It's actually not. They're all the same. Okay, so let's look at the 80-20 of maximizing profit from the business in this framework. So increase content, desire, and brand. So that whole, hey, can we 5 times the amount of content and value that we add, like at the front end. Then the second one is like, can we amplify paid ads? So paid media, ads amplification business. So how many times can we multiply our capital? Put $1 in, spitting 2 or 3 out, go, 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 go. We have no marketing budget whatsoever. If something's not working, yes, then we have a marketing budget. We turn it down, we tweak it. In our travel companies, actually, one of the things that's really, really made the most difference has been innovation. Just the speed that we innovate, the speed that we iterate. So it's kind of like a SaaS mixed with an e-com store, and we would put out 3, 4, or 5 just revisions of different stuff that we're either testing, in the cart, or an upsell process, or a customer retention process, or all these sorts of things. It's just never-ending iteration of enhancement in that space. So it's been a really, really big key. So profitable ads. If you've got something that's already working, throw more fuel on that fire. Increase the number of leads. One thing we've found is with businesses, the more leads you have coming in, and especially the more qualified leads, the more powerful the business is. Because if you've only got that 1 or 2 or 3 leads coming in, remember that word I spoke about before of, hey, we've all taken on that client where you kind of, your gut feel was, this is, they're not great for me, or we're not great for them. Something's not right here, but you've needed the cash flow and you've taken it on. Like if you've got really, really good leads, you don't fall into that situation, because you can say, hey, we're probably not a right fit for each other, but here's a free resource I'd recommend, or have a chat with so-and-so and refer them on. So increasing leads, really, really makes a difference. And Frank Kern was my coach in marketing for a while, and he was saying just increase the number of offers. How many offers have you got going out there? Like as far as different lead magnets and all that kind of stuff, and then just test quick, figure out what works, and then get rid of the losers. So increase the number of sales. We call this a profit triad. Increase the number of sales, get them spending more, and get them coming back again. So this is a very, very big focus and makes a massive, massive difference. So how many customers can we get? How much can we get them spending, at that time? And then can we get them buying again through follow-up sequences? Or ideally, can you put them on continuity so that they buy again, which means, repeat purchases? Can we decrease expenses? Really, the fastest way to increase the profitability of any business is just to decrease the expenses. So, because here's how it works. If you earn an extra $1,000 this month, that's not $1,000 worth of profit, because you might have cost of goods on that, you might have tax on that. So it might only really be $400 or something to that effect. But if you decrease the expenses of the business by $1,000, then that's direct profit. So often this is a better area to focus in than some of the others. And then minimize taxes legally. All right, so there's a lot more things to business than that, but that's just kind of like 80-20ing it down. And if you are a business owner, and you've got a good business, sometimes just taking money off the table is a great way to go. The amount of times that I've seen it when someone's had a really good offer to do an exit, and then they've held on, and then over time the landscapes change and the business isn't worth anything, or it's worth a fraction. So there's a lot to be said. Sometimes you just want to keep it and grow it and scale it. But at the moment, helping 2 people with different exits, taking money off the table, and you'll have to pay some tax on it, but just buying time, buying freedom, and then being able to assess, hey, what do I want to do next? And doing it in a strong, powerful position is a great way to go. The common problem we see over and over again, and we were very guilty of this as well, we're making money in the business, Now let's reinvest it back in the business, okay? And so this is good while you're growing, while you're scaling, and I think there's seasons to it. But if you do this all the time, then you never get to the point of, hey, what am I running this business for? It's really to fund my lifestyle, to make my retirement better, all that kind of thing. So this is a common trap. Anyone else guilty of this or just me? Yeah, nearly everyone. And so it's so common. We need to get money in the business is great, but we need to get money out of the business, right? So, and ultimately, cash if we can. So key question, hey, do we want to be a business owner or do we want to be a high net worth, still business owner, but entrepreneur and investor, right? So my focus, my identity used to be, hey, I'm a business owner, but now I'm a high net worth entrepreneur and investor. Just change that mindset, because if we go back to that key problem initially, remember we were looking at most people don't really have enough money in retirement and they don't really have a plan of how to fix it. So ultimately, this is where we go into the second part of we need to get our money working for us rather than just us working, for money. And ultimately, we need to be able to get money out of the business in order for it to be useful to us. So we've got money in the business. We need to be able to get it off into personal. Because remember, we were looking at those buckets, and we've got the business, we've got the personal, and then we've got superannuation. So, and we'll talk about superannuation a little bit more in a sec. And so superannuation, while it's not amazing, what it does do is give you a lower tax environment that you can actually grow the money faster. The downside of it is that you can't touch it until you're, 65 or something in Australia. You can get early access at 60. For some people, they might be thinking, hey, that's 20 years off or that's 15 years off or whatever. But the other side of it is it can be forced savings as well, because in some ways the government's saving us from us, sort of thing. And the other good thing I like about superannuation is they'll allow you to take a certain amount of money off, the table, relatively tax-free. I think it's like $25,000 a year or something like that. Ask your accountant about it. But ultimately, long story short, we need to take money out of the business. You can't just leave it all in the business. We need to get it into personal and we need to get it into superannuation. So that's talking about business. Now let's change to the second part of our story, which is the wealthiest version of you, but from investing this time, so like how we're going to plant something small and then, make it grow. So Albert Einstein, we talked about him yesterday a couple of times. Does anyone remember what he said about compound interest? Yeah, eighth wonder of the world, right. So if you understand compound interest, you can get it working for you, compounding, where a number's getting bigger, and then if even it had the same result, that's getting bigger again, the next year bigger and bigger. Or if you don't understand compound interest, you can pay it. So your bank understands, your mortgage broker, they understand compound interest very, very well. And you're on the wrong side of the equation there. But with your investing, with what we're going to look at together here, you can very, very much be on the right side of business. Okay, so let's look at our blackboard math. Because you remember, like when we looked at this before, it kind of felt a little bit ordinary, didn't it? Like, hang on a sec, how are we going to make up that gap? So I think it's important we go back to that and then let's solve that problem. All right, so if you remember, just quick recap, $3 million. Say we're 50 years of age, we've got 15 years left, we've got 500K right now, and then are we on track? Hang on, we're going to have to just save 166,000 a year, which everyone kind of agreed was not easy. So are we going to do it this way, 166,000 a year, or are we going to start with our 500,000 and are we getting it compounding at 12.7% a year, right? So I used to just identify as the marketing guy and the business guy, and I really wasn't thinking about this other side well enough, and it's cost me a fortune. Especially the one that I'm kicking myself that I wasn't smart enough about was when the .com boom happened, right? So I knew the winners. I knew Google was the winner, and I was a Google Premier partner. I knew, I started advertising on that platform within a month of it coming out. I did well out of it, and I knew Facebook was a winner, and I started advertising on that within 3 months of it coming out, and I did well. And I knew Amazon was a winner, and I've spent a lot of money there and used it for hosting and all sorts of stuff. But was I smart enough to buy the stock back then and hold it the whole time? There's more money if I had have just been smart enough to know to do that, or ideally do both. Use those ads platforms, whatever, they're incredible, but buy the stock, hold it, weather through all those storms. But in some ways, in some ways I sort of knew to do it, but that whole to know and not to do is not to know. And maybe I needed to see that, right? To know that, well, actually right now we have the exact same opportunity happen all over again. Because who would have agreed, knowing what you know now, if you went back to the start of the dot-com boom and with this conversation we've just had, and you bought Apple and you bought Amazon and you bought Google and you bought Facebook and you held those long-term over 10, 15 years, who thinks you'd be wealthier, right? Okay, but the same opportunity is happening right now. But in this case, it's an AI boom, right? So history is repeating itself. It's just like, hey, are we smarter this time around? And not all of us will wake up to it, but some of us, it's like, hell yeah, I'm not going to make that mistake again. So hopefully me being a dumbass back then can help you now. So 500,000, now we get it compounding at 12% a year. Okay, so we figured out we can't easily save the 166,000. If you've got a hero business, yes, you might be able to. But if we look for average, we can't save the 166,000 a year, right? So this is basically, how the math works. And it's probably a little bit small to see. But if we start with 500,000 and then we get it compounding, so each year it goes up by 12.7%. So then it goes to like 600,000 and 700 and 800 and 900. And ideally, we need to have really, really good diversification strategies in place so that if we have any losses over time, it doesn't really take out much of it. So we have to really, really be smart about how we do it. But that 500,000, if we then compounded it over that 15-year hypothetical period, it turned in a little bit over 3 mil, right? So who thinks it's probably, when we looked at Bitcoin yesterday, what was it growing at? It was growing at 40 and 50% a year, looking to go down to 25 and 30. So that's just one example, right? That's the only investment we've spoken about so far. So who thinks the 12% is like completely unreasonable? And we're going into an AI, and we're in an AI boom, right? So it's very, very, if you've got a problem with your math, with your blackboard math, then it's it could be a very, very fixable problem for you. And that's kind of like, what that looks like. All right, but what about if we now saved 25 grand a year? So who thinks the 25 grand a year towards our retirement from 50 to 65 is a more achievable goal than if we were going to have to save 165,000? Who's in the 25 camp? Yeah, most people. Anyone think the 160? It's a lot more difficult, right? There's a couple of people here that it's like, it's no problem to, but most would struggle with it, right? So now, if we still had that same goal, but if we added 25,000 a year to it, I call this feed the beast. And a lot of people, they invest and then they stop feeding it money, and so it doesn't compound anywhere near as fast. If you feed the beast, and when you've got spare money, especially if you buy on dips as well, as even better, you really, really compound it so much faster. So if we fed it just $25,000 a year, we could now achieve the same $3 million by just getting it to grow 10% a year. Does that make sense? So a combination, we've gone from a really, really bad situation of, hang on, we've got to save 167,000 or we've got no chance of hitting our goal, to now, hang on, if we just add a little bit each year to this and we get it growing, this will really, really make a difference. And that's the table. Basically, all it's saying is the same as before. We're growing at a lower rate, but we're feeding it $25,000 a year. So, and you could do this in your personal, or you could do it in your SMSF, or you could do it a combination of the two, that kind of thing. So you still end up roughly at the $3 million over the 15 years. So a lot of people think, like investing is risky. And, like in the short term, you may have a loss, like on something. But as a general rule, if you stick at it and you learn how to fish, you're going to win, especially with the time we're at in history is very, very exciting, because everyone's thinking about AI just as the tools. But I'm thinking about the more exciting thing of AI is the investments side. So remember, I always take on the top 1% mindset in everything that I do except for sports. And so it's like they're not if I win, it's like, how much that I'll win, to what extent, and how many times I can multiply our capital. Because Cam and I were talking about it the other day. He does share trading, and he's really, really good. I think he's a naturally talented investor. I think it's partially because of the house that he's grown up with, in the amount of conversations that he's heard about this stuff. Anyway, it's just soaked into his bones. He's very, very good at it. And then he's telling me about a gain that he had. And I said, that's awesome. But what I've learned is the individual gains don't matter. It's really about how many times can we take that capital and then multiply it. And the multiplier might be only, hey, we multiplied it by 1.3 this year, or 1.2 next year, or 1.4 next year. So it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, that kind of thing. So how many times can we multiply it? So then ultimately we're getting to the point where we're using our business to fund our investing in our lifestyle. So my mindset used to be, I'm going to use business to get rich. And that still does work if you have a hero business. But if you don't have a hero business like a fast-growing SaaS or a massive e-com store or a big consulting or coaching or whatever, if you don't have something that's huge, then it's much, much more difficult. So we're better off to use the business to fund our investing and use the business to fund our lifestyle. We looked at this yesterday, the cash flow quadrant from Robert Kiyosaki, self-employed business owner and investor. And then the wealthiest combination is being a business owner who's also an investor. So ultimately, we can't do everything. I meet people who they flip properties, they do commercial deals, they're doing stocks, and and now they're doing a course on bonds. You know what I mean, sort of things. It's wow, you're scattered across all these things. Choose something. So for me, it's tech investments. So shares in tech and crypto and Bitcoin, those kinds of things. So that's my lane. Get good at that and do the research. One thing I realized is if you think about your life up to this date, how much time have you spent learning about business, studying marketing, studying sales, these kinds of things. And then ask yourself the same question of how much time up to this date have you spent learning about investing? Okay, and I said, look at the faces of people don't look at me, because they've spent this much time learning about business, marketing and sales and this much time learning about investing. So then I realized I was the same back 10 years ago. I was okay, well, hang on a second. Now I really need to do the time on that, become a specialist. So we saw that superannuation is a way that we can get to funding our retirement and be wealthy, in retirement. So let's look at the mistake I would say 99% of people make with their superannuation. And it's unfortunate, but it's really just a lack of knowledge and not really knowing better ways to do things. The average gains from a superannuation fund, I thought it would have been higher, I guess 10 or 12%. ChatGPT told me it's 8% a year in Australia. So it's going up at 8%. So if you had 100,000 and then went up to 108,000. But it didn't really, because the average fees is 2% a year. But so here's the thing. There's different types of superannuation, and most people have it in what's called a mutual fund, right? And you'll see ads that make sure you invest in a superannuation fund that has this logo. You know what I mean? They're advertising based off, make sure you got this logo, not based off, hey, we're going to give you the best returns with the lowest fees. So we'll run a poll, see who is more interested in investing if they got this logo. Okay, no one. What about highest returns, lowest fees? More. Yeah, good. That's good. So yeah, the second one's obviously better. So if you have a mutual fund, what it means is they're buying and selling all the time on your behalf, right? So they've got some people in their organization who are very, very clever, and they're trying to outperform the market. And every time they buy and sell, it incurs fees. But they don't keep the fees, they pass the fees on to you. So I think this 2% is actually kind of low. At times, some people where I've audited their superannuation, it's been as high as 4% fees. So ideally, you don't want to do mutual funds. If you are going to do some kind of fund, an index fund is much, much better, because they buy it once and then they sell it once for you, and it's just a blanket of things. And then I asked ChatGPT as well for the accurate stats. I was pretty accurate on this one. What's inflation? So how much is the cost of everything going up? 4%. So your 8% isn't looking so good anymore, because you assume your money's going up at 8%, but it's actually the real purchasing power of it is going up at 2%. So do you think this is helping, or is this part of our problem, with that initial blackboard math? Who's excited about 2% a year gains? Anyone? One down the back? Okay, cool. Stick with us. You need to see the second half of that presentation. It gets better, trust me. Yeah. So 2% gains is rubbish. We don't want this. You know what's funny, but what's interesting? If you think of 100 people you know, or say you think of 10 people you know, 9 or more of them, this is their standard. This is exactly what they do. This is their wealth creation plan. Does that make sense? And this is the norm in Australia, right? So my SMSF the last 5 years, average gains of roughly 30% a year, average fees of 0.5% a year, average inflation of 4%, nothing I can do about that. So our average real gains is 24% a year. Do you see the difference? 24% versus 2. But are we going to be able to keep hitting 30% on our SMSF? Probably not. Like over time, at the moment, we're in an incredible time in history with Bitcoin and with AI tech stocks and things like that and gold and stuff. But over time, that'll probably go down. Might end up at 20 or 15 or whatever, but it's still a long way off the 8. And also the other thing is we've got our fees down. The only downside of like the way I do it is self-managed super fund. It's like running a company. You've just got like a little bit more accounting cost, that sort of thing. But I'll take more accounting costs. It's just like running a company. Everyone, you've got to do a books for your accounting because it means that I'm not limited in what investment vehicles that I can get into. So if you then look at the 2% versus the 30%, if you started with 100,000 over 15 years, in this graph, it doesn't even look like the 2% one, has moved at all, right? And I'm sure if you zoomed in, it has gone up slightly, but you can see the difference because basically you're set up to not have the compound interest like working in your favor is basically what's happening. And then this one was like if you got rid of the inflation figure, it does show like what's happening with it. Your number is going up, but your real purchasing power is not. So do we want to do what the wealthy do or do we want to do what the poor and middle class do? So ultimately, we want to do what the wealthy do. So 99% of people have managed superannuation funds and 75% of the money in Australia is in managed funds, right? And then 1% of the people have self-managed super funds and that accounts for 25% of the money. Do you see a trend there? What are the smartest people doing? Yeah, 1%. They're doing the self-managed. And the reason why is because, say for example, you have a superannuation fund and your number 632,314. How much do they care about you versus how much do you care about you if you manage it yourself? That's why I try to teach people to fish, learn how to fish themselves because no one's going to care about your retirement more than you. There's no one coming along to save you. So hopefully the thought process evolution goes from, hey, I need to keep up with AI and I need to grow my business, but it evolves to then saying, hey, but I also need to learn and play the money game of the rich because the system is setting you up to not be wealthy in retirement. But if you just learn different stuff, you can be very, very, very wealthy in retirement is what I've found from my experience. So if we want to be wealthy in retirement, ultimately, we have to move from superannuation that's managed, remember with that high fees, we have to learn how to fish. So you either have to do the fishing or get someone to teach you how to fish. And then ultimately you have to move over to a self-managed super fund because if you speak to your accountant, they'll say, oh, you don't have enough money in it or whatever, because there's a little bit of, it's just like running a company. But you ultimately have the choice. I would say as long as you've got more than 50 grand or 100 grand or something to that effect, then this is a good move. If you only have 20,000, it may not be because, the cost of running a corporate entity, for your self-managed super fund. But it unlocks everything that you can do and then you can basically have more freedom to grow it much, much faster. So who would be interested in the answers on the wealthy retirement test? We've got 2, 3. All right. 4, 5. All right, so I'll run through it for you, 4 or 5. So basically the winning categories, so hard assets. So remember we looked at gold, we looked at silver, we looked at Bitcoin. Remember yesterday, is the government spending our money wisely? Are they managing their budgets? Yes or no? No. Are they going to be able to get that under control? Not likely. So then they're going to keep printing money. So gold, silver, Bitcoin is going to be more and more valuable. So crypto, blockchain, again, the world is moving all that way. It's just a better way of doing things. The world's financial system is broken. And then AI technology. Remember that story of like, hey, I should have bought Google, Amazon, etc. So it's like these categories. But then, so if they're the three winning categories in the world, now what are the winners within those? Does that make sense? So what's the 80-20 within that? Well, yeah, within the 80-20. And then can we do this in both our personal and can we do it in our SMSF? Cool. And then we can outperform the gains by just keep feeding the beast. I see this so often where someone's put money into their investments and then they've let it ride and then they talk about how much it's gone up or didn't, but didn't keep feeding it. So you can see here the investing consistently, it gives it a bump and then it's a bigger amount of money that goes in. And ideally we want to, so this is a 4-year cycle from the crypto's gone through historically. I think it's different now, or Bitcoin cycle is different now post the ETFs, but the rest of the crypto altcoins will probably still go through that cycle. But if we can buy in bear markets or buy when the markets just had a correction, so I had a big correction this week, and then I did another buy, that kind of thing. So buy in dips will outperform. And then so there's like the building the big golden goose, but you can also build cash flow streams with this. So ideally, if you can get your investing to create some passive income streams that are greater than your expenses, that's kind of like really how you can get free. So one of the things we've been talking about with a couple of people in the group is that there's not now a modern money market with a guaranteed 10.25%. So you put in $100,000 and then they'll guarantee to give you 10.25% a year. And that's a Fortune 500 company. So that's pretty good if you're in a situation where you've got a lot of cash. That can be a great spot to park it. Then there's also another strategy that we're getting into now, which is high dividend, high yield, maximization stocks. And so these are stocks that are really designed, they do some clever stuff and they pay you 4% a month to 6% a month. So you just get money every month. So ideally getting more and more of these income streams that if you can get more money coming in without you doing anything, getting your money working for you, that's awesome. And then there's a much higher risk one, but higher gains, which is AI bot trading. And some of those can be as high as, 10 and 12% a month. So, which is, because basically with trading, it's very, very hard to outperform an AI trading bot because we have emotions and they don't. So they just work off rules. So very, very smart, some of those things we can do. And then ultimately, like moving to this, what do the top 1% of people do? They don't try to maximize their income, right? What they try to do, and because if you pay yourself $100,000 or you pay yourself $200,000 or whatever, the government wants a good chunk of that. It might be 37%, 40%, whatever it is of that. What the really, really rich do is they don't do that. They build up assets. So they buy shares or they'll buy like gold or Bitcoin or whatever, that kind of thing. And then they'll build it up in value, doing exactly what we're talking about, compounding it. And then once it's big enough, then they'll borrow a little slither of it, like 10% or something like that, and then live off that. So because borrowings, if you borrow from an asset, you don't pay any tax on it. And then the next year they do the same thing again. And they never actually pay it off, but the asset keeps going up in value and they've just got this money going around in a circle. And that's what, like, if you look at the world's billionaires, a lot of them don't pay very much tax at all. And this is how they're doing that. Like Elon Musk, when he got his latest, like he's negotiating this, I can't remember the size of it. It was a massive, massive deal if he hits certain goals. He doesn't want to be paid in cash. He wants to be paid in stock options. And so he's going to receive stock for his company and then he's going to borrow against it. Anytime that he wants money for himself or to do anything, he just borrows against it and then he just pays it back and borrows against it and the money goes around in a circle. That's basically what the billionaires of the world do. And there's people in the group that do this a lot better than me. Rob is like one of the leading authorities on this in the country, particularly in the development space. But we're also, Jules and I were looking at, okay, well, parking gains. There's this old saying, safe as houses. So parking gains off in property over time. I think it's great to own your house. It's great to own other property assets. and ultimately try and live a semi-retired lifestyle if you can. So not all work and hustle. Like I'm 50, I don't want to between 50 and 70 just work like a dog. I don't think it's smart, you know what I mean? So that's why I'm just trying to, that's why I like surf every day or get on the e-bike or, whatever it is, and build an amazing life resume. Think about how many amazing cool things can you do in your year, and ideally schedule them in advance so that they just happen. So ultimately, all of this is a massive game of chess. You can see that if we do B plus I, is much smarter than B. And the prize, if you get this right, is ultimately, is freedom and security, which we sort of all agreed that we want. So ultimately, if we can get that marketing black belt we spoke about, and business black belt, and investing black belt, then that's how we can get to that giraffe money that we joke about. Rob here actually even had a giraffe shirt on yesterday. I thought that was pretty cool. That was awesome. So very good. He's keen on his giraffe money. So if we identify as, hey, I'm a business owner, and I know there's a lot of us, then can we morph and our identity become, I'm B plus I, I'm now a business owner, plus an investor. There's more money in that. So at the beginning, I said, hey, I'll just show you, people have been asking about the collective. I'll just spend 5 minutes now and then show you what we do with that, because this is kind of like a taste of what we do in that group. Obviously, in there, we go a lot deeper. So the idea is to help transform business owners into high net worth entrepreneurs and investors, and have a heap of fun on the journey is really what that's about. So the areas that I help you in with, so the mindset and emotional intelligence stuff, then also growth hacking and maximizing profit from your business, helping you to get money out of the business and put it in personal and super, how to what the money games of the rich are, and then play those so that because most people don't even know the rules of the game, let alone know how to play them. Change your superannuation from super to SMSF. We haven't even spoken about this at all, but what we do is we do biohacking. So we very, very big in this, things like the full body MRI. We do things to slow down our aging process, things to do hormone optimization, all that kind of stuff, lifestyle, diet, nutrition. This is a big focus in the group as well. And you've seen major, major changes, in people's lives. Yeah, and then help people with the self-managing team. So we've been very, very good at creating freedom back. So helping people how do you get unstuck? Often people don't have a project management system, or they don't have a way of getting their team doing stuff without them. So help people to get more time and money freedom. And we help people to be ahead of the curve with AI. So hopefully you've improved your knowledge in AI in this space. So we do that constantly. We help you to get more traffic, so we'll have working meetings with you. I'll help you build your Google AdWords, help you build your Facebook ads, and then there's other people in the group that can help with that as well. Funnel optimization, so landing page design, that kind of stuff. Capture more leads, to help you to turn your leads into more customers, and then for those who have e-com, how to drive more e-com sales, and then ultimately how to engineer more profit and cash, exactly what Kevin was talking about. It doesn't really matter how much money you make in the business. It really matters about how much profit and cash you can pull out of it. But the best bit of it is these folks, the group of amazing, positive, like-minded entrepreneurs and investors who do really cool, fun stuff together a couple of times a year. This was the recent one we took in Queenstown, which was an amazing trip. The next thing we have is a jet ski safari coming up, which is in December. So it's just amazing, positive, like-minded, help each other, on the journey. So this was when we went and did whitewater rafting in Cairns. We have another whitewater rafting thing in Sydney coming up in March. And at the masterminds, because everyone bonds together, then when someone gets up and presents their biggest problem or opportunity, you get everyone helps them in a safe, trusted way. So, and because they friends, they really, really help each other. It's amazing, a powerful thing to see. And I do one-on-one calls with you. We have group calls, and we also do training webinars, regularly as well. And then anything we've done in the past is all recorded, and you have access to all that in sort of all those different areas. So mindset, business, marketing, sales, investing, longevity, e-com, Amazon, financial IQ, lifestyle design, property investing. I'm certainly not the best at property investing. Like I said, there's people in the group that are way, way smarter than me at that. So give you access to all of our training. So really, like if you look at the results, it's very, very common for people to double the business, in the first year, and go on from there. Some of them doubled multiple times, tripled, etc. It's very, very common because it's a formula and a recipe. And what's interesting, if you look at the businesses now, like a lot of people are more excited about the I side, the investing side, than they are the business. But they all came in for the business originally, and then they morph over time into B plus I. And then the ones that have been at it for a while are doing, really, really well. So ultimately, once you learn these things, I think you can become a puppet master. And then, people say you can't have it all, but I think really you can. If you know what you're doing, you kind of can engineer to have it all. So with that way we work with businesses, it used to be nearly $5,000 a month, when we had our agency, but that was a lot more hands-on. Now we work with businesses for less than $3,000 a month. So at the moment, we're doing it at 2.5 a month. And to some people, that'll seem like a lot of money. But then if you look at that problem before of, the blackboard math, like, are you on track to reach your goals? If you keep doing the exact same thing that you're doing, are you going to get a different result? Probably not, so does it make sense to spend a year of your life learning the money games of the rich and playing those games? Because what's the cost if you don't learn these things? You've either got to learn it or have someone teach it, to you. So I've heard this was said at the Christmas party, recently, where it's like a sliding door opportunity. If you go through this door, your life changes in a whole bunch of ways that you really don't even realize at this stage. So it's a pretty cool, fun thing to see the transformation that happens in people's lives. So ultimately, two choices: invest in yourself, go it alone, or let us help you to achieve your desired results, like faster. And if you get it right, there's really good freedom and security to it. Jules and Cam handed out these forms. So if you want to have a chat, just fill that out. And then we're very honest as far as we'll look at your business, look at where you're at in your life and what your goals are. And if we can help you, we'll let you know. And if we can't, then then we'll let you know as well. So it's very, very honest with that approach. But hopefully you got some good value out of that. And a couple of things, I saw some people have some good ahas, and people told me about the one yesterday that really had a good impact on them. So hopefully this had a good impact on some of you. All in all, we live by this, live a great story, work smart. So notice it doesn't say work hard. It's work smart, play hard, and enjoy the journey. Thank you.